What if the person you thought abandoned you was actually searching for you all along? I was 9 when I found the phone. It was just lying there on a rusted park bench beside the broken swing set, screen cracked, half buried in pine needles. I didn't know that picking it up would change everything, that inside it lived the truth about my father, the reason my mother vanished, and the beginning of a story I never thought belonged to me. I had lived with Grandma Annie for 3 years when I found the phone. She said my mother needed space, but even as a kid, I knew that was a lie. People who need space still send postcards. People who need space don't leave behind daughters who wake up crying every night, whispering mama into their pillows until their throats dry out. That September morning was just like any other, overcast, sticky with humidity, the smell of rotting leaves and hot metal hanging in the air. I was at the park by myself again. Grandma Annie said kids don't need friends if they have imagination, but even my imaginary friends had gotten bored of me by then. I was making lines in the dirt with a stick when I saw it, half hidden on the bench, like someone had tried to leave it behind but changed their mind too late. It wasn't locked. No passcode, just a wallpaper of a man holding a fish bigger than his head. I wasn't supposed to keep things that didn't belong to me. But something about the phone felt personal. It didn't feel like stealing. It felt like stumbling across something that had been meant for me. I took it home and plugged it into Grandma Annie's old charger. The battery blinked to life. Notifications flooded the screen, missed calls, messages, even a few videos. I opened one. The man from the wallpaper was smiling into the camera, wearing a red windbreaker. If you're watching this, then you found my phone, and hey, thank you. I'm Dave, and I really need this back. There's something on here I can't lose. Dave. I didn't know why that name made my stomach twist. But it did. I clicked on the next video. This one was older. Dave looked younger, less tired. He was standing in front of a tiny white house with peeling paint. I keep dreaming of her, he said quietly, staring just left of the lens. She had her mama's hair, but my eyes. I only saw her once, but I remember her. I know she's out there. My breath caught. I ran to the bathroom mirror. I had my mom's curls. Everyone said so. But my eyes? They weren't hers. They were a cold, sharp gray, like steel in sunlight. Just like Dave's. By the end of that night, I'd watched every video, read every message, every unsent email draft. Dave had spent the past few years trying to find someone. A daughter. Me. He didn't even know I was alive. And I didn't know he was real. Dave found out about me on a Wednesday afternoon, standing in the middle of a bait shop parking lot in rural Virginia. The phone had a lost device alert that pinged its location. I'd watched it blink across the map for 2 days before I finally built up the nerve to text him, "I found your phone. Are you Dave?" It took less than 5 minutes for him to reply, "Yes." Oh my God. Where are you? Is it safe? Are you okay? I wasn't expecting that. Not "are you okay," not from a man I didn't know. But the way he said it made my throat close up. Like he meant it. Like he knew. I didn't tell Grandma Annie. She would have taken the phone, maybe even smashed it. She always said my mama ran off with a man who ruined her, and she didn't have much patience for strangers who came sniffing around the family tree. Instead, I used the school computer lab during recess. I found his name, David Mitchell. Former Navy mechanic. Worked offshore oil rigs for a few years. Now he ran a charter boat company in Virginia Beach. He'd filed a police report about the phone. And he'd posted on a local Facebook page. This phone means everything to me. If anyone finds it, there's a reward. I'm looking for my daughter. My fingers trembled as I typed, "What's her name?" He replied in seconds. "I don't know. Her mother never told me." That's when I knew. I sent a photo of myself. It was the only one I had, school portrait, badly lit, awkward smile. And I waited. When he called, he didn't say anything at first. Just breathed. "Hello?" I whispered. "You have my eyes." I burst into tears. The next few days were a blur. Dave drove down the very next morning. I skipped school and met him at a gas station 6 miles outside town. I don't know what I expected. A hug? Tears? Maybe anger? What I got was silence. He looked at me like I was a ghost. Then he sat down on the curb and cried. He told me everything. How he and my mother, Hannah, had dated when she was 20, and how her family had never liked him. How she vanished after an argument one night, and no one ever answered his calls after that. "She just disappeared," he said hoarsely. "I thought she hated me. I thought maybe she lost the baby. She didn't. I was the baby. And I had no idea where she was either." I begged him not to leave. So he stayed in town. Got a cheap motel room and said he wanted to do things right. "I'm not here to take you," he said. "I just want to know you. However much you'll let me." But then I got hit by a car. It was raining. I'd run out after an argument with Grandma Annie. She'd found out about Dave. Called him trash and said I'd better cut him out like Hannah should have. I told her I hated her. That was the last thing I said before I darted into the road. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital, unable to feel my legs. The doctor said I might never walk again. Grandma Annie said it was punishment for going behind her back. Dave was the only one who didn't flinch. He sat beside me every day, holding my hand. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. "I just found you. I'm not losing you now." I was in hospice before I understood what that word really meant. They didn't call it that at first, just a long-term care facility, tucked behind a sleepy church in a gravel lot, smelling like antiseptic and resignation. The halls were too quiet. The lights too dim. It felt like the kind of place where people waited to disappear. I was 11. The accident had shattered my spine in 2 places. Doctors said the damage was incomplete, which meant there was hope, but not much. I couldn't move my legs. Couldn't feel anything below my waist. I stopped asking when I'd get better after the 3rd specialist stopped making eye contact. Grandma Annie didn't come often. And when she did, she made it worse. "You wouldn't be here if you'd listened," she said once, folding a blanket over my legs like I was already gone. But Dave came every single day. He brought crossword books, old fishing magazines, chocolate chip cookies he swore were almost as good as homemade. He talked to me like I wasn't broken, like I hadn't stopped being a person just because I couldn't walk. And even when I snapped or cried or told him to leave me alone, he stayed. "I'm your dad," he said once, his voice quiet and certain. "Being here for you isn't a choice. It's a promise." One night, I overheard the nurses talking in hushed voices outside my door. Something about insurance. Something about moving me to a state-run facility once the coverage dried up. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just stared at the ceiling and thought, this is where people go when they're done. The next morning, Dave walked in holding a folder. His face was red, like he'd been arguing. "I'm taking you out of here," he said. "You're coming with me." I didn't believe him. Not until the social worker came in and told me it was true. Dave had gotten temporary guardianship. He'd hired a lawyer. Filed paperwork. Arranged for home care. And just like that, I wasn't a hospice kid anymore. I was going home with my father. The first few weeks were rough. His house wasn't built for wheelchairs. The bathroom door was too narrow. The ramp he built from YouTube tutorials nearly collapsed under my chair. I was embarrassed. Angry. Helpless. Every night I cried into the pillow, hating myself for needing so much. But Dave never made me feel like a burden. He carried me when I couldn't reach the bed. Learned to cook mashed potatoes the way I liked. Spent hours driving me to appointments with new doctors he'd found through a friend who owed him a favor. And then came the miracle. A neurologist in Norfolk, Dr. Leland, said she wanted to run updated imaging. Her scans are old, she said. We've made progress since then. I didn't get my hopes up. But 2 weeks later, Dr. Leland walked into the room holding a tablet, her eyes wide. There's scar tissue, yes, she said. But the spinal cord isn't severed. There's still signal flow. She leaned in, her tone gentle but firm. I think with surgery and intensive therapy, she has a chance. A chance. I couldn't breathe. Dave exhaled like he'd been holding it for years. He gripped my hand and whispered, "You hear that? You've got a shot, sweetheart." For the first time since the accident, I wanted to try. We scheduled the surgery for early spring. It wasn't guaranteed. But when I came out of anesthesia and wiggled one toe, just the tiniest flicker, I heard Dave laugh for the first time in weeks. "Atta girl," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "You're coming back." I didn't even recognize her at first. It was late May when she showed up, standing nervously at the edge of Dave's porch in a faded hoodie, her hands buried in her sleeves like she wanted to disappear. Dave had stepped out for groceries, and I was in my wheelchair near the screen door, watching birds pick at the feeder. She didn't knock. Just whispered, "Hey." I froze. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, streaked with gray. Her face was thinner, older, like life had been heavy for a long time. But the voice, that was hers. "Mom?" She nodded once, lips trembling. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Dave came home an hour later and nearly dropped the milk. The air between them crackled. No shouting, just decades of words neither of them had the courage to say. But when he looked at me, eyes soft, unsure, he took a deep breath. "She stays," I said, before he could speak. "At least for a little while." And so, just like that, the woman who vanished came back into my life. She slept on the couch and barely spoke at first. But I saw the way she watched me. The way her eyes lingered on the scars. On the wheelchair. On Dave helping me lift my legs onto the bed at night. Sometimes I'd catch her crying in the kitchen when she thought no one was awake. One morning, she finally told the truth. "I didn't leave you," she said. "I was forced out." She explained how her parents, Grandma Annie included, hated Dave. How they made her choose between staying with them or keeping me and Dave in her life. She was 20, broke, and scared. So she chose safety. "And I've regretted it every single day," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to believe. But part of me, deep down, wanted her to be telling the truth. Because maybe then I hadn't been abandoned. Maybe I'd just been taken. It was around that time the Mitchells, Dave's extended family, started circling. At first, it was innocent. Cousins visiting. Aunts dropping off casseroles. But then came the meetings. The "we're just concerned" conversations. "She's got medical needs," one aunt whispered. "Dave's not a nurse. He runs a boat for a living." Then the lawyer letters arrived. The Mitchells wanted custody. "We believe Dave is not adequately equipped to care for a child with a complex disability." Dave was crushed. He never said it, but I saw it in his shoulders. In the way he started waking up early to study therapy techniques online. In the way he triple-checked my meds and charted every tiny improvement. But it wasn't enough. The case went to court. That's when Mom stepped forward. "I'm her biological mother," she said. "And I want to be part of this fight." Dave looked at her, confused. "You sure?" She nodded. "They want to split us apart. I won't let them." With a shared lawyer and a united front, they fought back. It was messy. The Mitchells had money, status, and a whole narrative about what was best. But what they didn't have was me. Because when the judge asked where I wanted to live, I said, "With my parents." Both of them. Not aunts. Not cousins. Not a distant family trying to play hero. But the two people who actually showed up. The judge ruled in our favor. Custody remained with Dave. Visitation rights were extended to Mom. And just like that, I had a family again. A messy, bruised, beautiful family. I was still learning how to walk when I first noticed it, the way Dave looked at her when she wasn't watching. It wasn't obvious. Just little moments. How he'd pause when she laughed. How his voice softened when he said her name. How he always left the porch light on if she came back late from work, even though she had a key. And then there was Mom. She started lingering in the kitchen long after dinner, pretending to clean up while Dave brewed his awful gas station coffee. They'd sit at opposite ends of the table, talking in low voices about things I wasn't old enough to understand, life before me, what could have been, what still might be. It wasn't dramatic. No big declarations. Just two people slowly remembering who they used to be, and maybe imagining who they could still become. By then, I'd moved from the wheelchair to a walker. Every step was hard, sweaty, painful, exhausting, but I did it. And they were there for all of it. When I took my first 3 unassisted steps, Mom cried. Dave clapped like a maniac. I fell on my butt 2 seconds later, and we laughed so hard it felt like breaking. I hadn't felt joy like that in years. We started doing family dinners. Real ones. Dave would grill something weird, like cedar plank salmon he swore was gourmet, and Mom would burn the rice just enough to make it crunchy. I'd set the table with mismatched forks and paper napkins and act like it was a 5-star restaurant. We weren't perfect. We didn't need to be. Sometimes Mom would get quiet when her phone buzzed and she saw Grandma Annie's name. Sometimes Dave would disappear to the dock at night, staring out at the water like it held answers he couldn't reach. But they were trying. We were trying. And slowly, things started to shift. One night in July, I woke up thirsty and wheeled into the kitchen for water. They didn't hear me. They were standing close, too close. Mom was barefoot in her pajamas, Dave still in his work clothes. The window was open. Cicadas hummed. I still love you, Dave said, his voice low. I think I never stopped. Mom didn't speak. She just leaned into him. And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. They didn't rush it. There were no labels. No pressure. But the house felt warmer after that. Lighter. Like something had been unlocked that had stayed buried too long. They started flirting, badly. Dave would steal her pancakes. Mom would accidentally delete his fishing shows from the DVR. I pretended to gag every time they got too cute, but secretly, it made me feel whole. Because I'd never seen them like that before. Not together. Not happy. Not like a family. The doctors called it a miracle. My recovery was slow but steady. After months of therapy, I could walk short distances without assistance. My legs ached most days, and I still used the chair when I was tired, but I was moving again. Living again. And every single step I took reminded me of who helped me stand in the first place. It started with a knock on the door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just firm. Like the kind of knock that's been practiced. The kind that says, we're not here to visit. We're here to disrupt. Mom opened it and froze. Standing on the porch were 2 sharply dressed strangers, a man in a tailored navy suit, and a woman holding a clipboard. Behind them, parked on the curb, was a black SUV with government plates. Ma'am, the woman said crisply. We're here regarding the custody arrangement for your daughter. My stomach dropped. It turned out one of Dave's cousins, Linda, the loudest and most judgmental of the Mitchell clan, had filed a formal complaint with Child Services. She claimed our home was unstable. That I was being raised by a woman with a history of abandonment and a father with no formal education in pediatric rehabilitation. She said I needed a more structured, traditional family environment. In other words, she wanted to take me away. Again. I thought Dave would lose it. But he didn't. He sat at the dining table, reading the letter word by word. His jaw was tight. His hands didn't shake. Then he stood up, looked at me, and said, "Call Sam." Sam was our lawyer. The thing about Dave? He learns from his pain. The last custody battle had nearly broken him. This time, he was ready. He and Mom documented everything: my progress, the therapy schedules, the school reports, the house modifications. Every bill. Every medication. Every single receipt for the adaptive equipment they'd saved for months to afford. They even filmed a walkthrough of the house, showing my room, my bathroom, my study space, the garden I loved. They weren't just fighting for custody. They were proving what love looks like when it's earned. And then came court day. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. The Mitchell cousins sat in the back, all stiff posture and smug glances. Linda had that look on her face, the one people wear when they believe the law is a formality, because they've already decided they're right. Dave wore his cleanest flannel and polished boots. Mom wore a blazer that didn't quite fit but made her look strong. I sat between them in my wheelchair, legs braced, nerves buzzing. Linda's lawyer painted us as unstable, reckless, emotionally manipulative. She said I was being exploited for sympathy, and claimed I'd never fully recover under unqualified care. Then Sam stood up. And destroyed them. He spoke clearly, methodically, like a man who'd walked through fire with us and made it out the other side. He presented our documentation. Our evaluations. Letters from my doctors, therapists, and even my principal. But it was his closing statement that landed the final blow. This isn't about guardianship. It's about resentment disguised as concern. It's about a family who disappeared until they wanted control, and a child who has already chosen where home is. Then he turned to me and asked gently, "Would you like to speak?" My voice was shaking. But I did. I told the judge I loved my dad. That my mom had come back and never left again. That this house, this life, this struggle, they were mine. That healing wasn't just about therapy, it was about feeling safe. And I told them the truth: I'd rather live in a one-bedroom with these two than in a mansion with people who don't know me. The judge didn't need long. Custody remained unchanged. And this time? It was permanent. After the ruling, Dave didn't cry. Neither did Mom. But when we got back in the car, he looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "You didn't just survive, kid. You made damn sure everyone knew who you belonged to." I smiled. Because I finally knew, too. It started with a knock on the door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just firm. Like the kind of knock that's been practiced. The kind that says, "We're not here to visit. We're here to disrupt." Mom opened it and froze. Standing on the porch were two sharply dressed strangers, a man in a tailored navy suit, and a woman holding a clipboard. Behind them, parked on the curb, was a black SUV with government plates. "Ma'am," the woman said crisply. "We're here regarding the custody arrangement for your daughter." My stomach dropped. It turned out one of Dave's cousins, Linda, the loudest and most judgmental of the Mitchell clan, had filed a formal complaint with Child Services. She claimed our home was unstable. That I was being raised by a woman with a history of abandonment and a father with no formal education in pediatric rehabilitation. She said I needed a more structured, traditional family environment. In other words, she wanted to take me away. Again. I thought Dave would lose it. But he didn't. He sat at the dining table, reading the letter word by word. His jaw was tight. His hands didn't shake. Then he stood up, looked at me, and said, "Call Sam." Sam was our lawyer. The thing about Dave? He learns from his pain. The last custody battle had nearly broken him. This time, he was ready. He and Mom documented everything: my progress, the therapy schedules, the school reports, the house modifications. Every bill. Every medication. Every single receipt for the adaptive equipment they'd saved for months to afford. They even filmed a walkthrough of the house, showing my room, my bathroom, my study space, the garden I loved. They weren't just fighting for custody. They were proving what love looks like when it's earned. And then came court day. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. The Mitchell cousins sat in the back, all stiff posture and smug glances. Linda had that look on her face, the one people wear when they believe the law is a formality, because they've already decided they're right. Dave wore his cleanest flannel and polished boots. Mom wore a blazer that didn't quite fit but made her look strong. I sat between them in my wheelchair, legs braced, nerves buzzing. Linda's lawyer painted us as unstable, reckless, emotionally manipulative. She said I was being exploited for sympathy, and claimed I'd never fully recover under unqualified care. Then Sam stood up. And destroyed them. He spoke clearly, methodically, like a man who'd walked through fire with us and made it out the other side. He presented our documentation. Our evaluations. Letters from my doctors, therapists, and even my principal. But it was his closing statement that landed the final blow. This isn't about guardianship. It's about resentment disguised as concern. It's about a family who disappeared until they wanted control, and a child who has already chosen where home is. Then he turned to me and asked gently, "Would you like to speak?" My voice was shaking. But I did. I told the judge I loved my dad. That my mom had come back and never left again. That this house, this life, this struggle, they were mine. That healing wasn't just about therapy, it was about feeling safe. And I told them the truth: I'd rather live in a one-bedroom with these two than in a mansion with people who don't know me. The judge didn't need long. Custody remained unchanged. And this time, it was permanent. After the ruling, Dave didn't cry. Neither did Mom. But when we got back in the car, he looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "You didn't just survive, kid. You made damn sure everyone knew who you belonged to." I smiled. Because I finally knew, too. It was an ordinary Tuesday when the letter came. No fancy envelope. No return address. Just a plain white fold, tucked among utility bills and pharmacy coupons. Dave tossed it on the table without looking, assuming it was junk. But Mom picked it up. Read the name. And froze. "It's from the driver," she said. "The man who hit me. The man whose truck crushed my spine and sent me to a wheelchair." We didn't know much about him. Just his name, Marcus Tate. He was in his late 30s, worked for a construction company, clean record. The accident had been just that, an accident. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't speeding. He just didn't see me in the rain. The DA dropped charges. Said it was a tragic convergence of timing. I hadn't thought about him in months. I didn't want to. But something in Mom's face made me curious. I opened the letter. "To the girl I hurt," that's how it started. He wrote about the day of the accident. How he couldn't sleep for weeks. How every time he closed his eyes, he saw my small body on the pavement. How he had 2 kids of his own, and the thought of what he'd done made him physically sick. But then came the line that changed everything. "I wasn't just the cause of your pain, I became a prisoner of it too." I suffered a spinal injury of my own 3 months later. They say it was unrelated, but I believe karma had its hand. He was paralyzed. A work accident. A fall from scaffolding. He was now in a rehab center across the state, learning how to use his arms again, how to dress himself, how to live with the thing he'd once caused in someone else. He ended the letter like this. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know, you're not alone. And if you ever want to talk to someone who understands, I'm here." I didn't know what to feel. At first, I was angry. He doesn't get to be a victim. Then sad. Maybe he was one all along. Then confused. What would I even say to him? But that night, as I sat on the porch and watched the sky melt into violet, I thought about everything I'd been through. About what Dave always said. Pain doesn't just break people. It changes them. What you do next, that's the real story. So I wrote back. We started with letters. Nothing heavy. Just small things, therapy frustrations, hospital food horror stories, memories of the first time we each moved our fingers again. It was strange, opening up to the man who once shattered me. But somehow, it felt safe. He never asked for sympathy. Never made excuses. He just listened. Shared. Related. And I realized something. He wasn't the villain. He was a mirror. A reminder of how fragile everything is. How 1 second can reshape your life. But also how recovery is possible. Months later, Dave drove me out to visit Marcus in person. His hands trembled when I rolled into the room. His eyes welled up. I wasn't sure if he'd cry or bolt. Instead, he said, "You walked in here." "I did," I said. "And you will too." We sat for hours. Talked about pain, guilt, therapy. About what it meant to be broken, and how it doesn't make you less human. And before I left, I said the words I never thought I'd say. "I forgive you." When I got back in the car, Dave squeezed my hand. "You didn't just heal, kid," he whispered. "You gave someone else a reason to." Life didn't go back to normal. It became something better. We weren't the family people expected, no white picket fence, no picture-perfect photo ops. We were stitched together with late-night takeout, shared therapy appointments, and quiet forgiveness. But we were real. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. We found our rhythm. I started school again, real school. No more hospital tutors or online packets. I walked through those double doors on trembling legs, gripping my cane with a white-knuckled grip, but I walked. And when I turned around, Dave and Mom were both crying. They kissed in front of my entire homeroom. It was horrifying. But also, kind of perfect. That fall, they made it official. Dave proposed at the park where I found the phone. The same bench, still rusted, now with a tiny plaque he had installed that read, "To the girl who brought us back." She said yes before he even finished the question. They laughed and cried and promised to do it right this time, not for nostalgia, but for now. For us. We had a small wedding. Backyard, barbecue, bare feet in the grass. Dave wore a linen shirt that didn't quite fit. Mom cried when I gave my speech, which started with, "Some girls find their dads in delivery rooms." I found mine in a voicemail. We danced to an old Fleetwood Mac song I didn't know the name of, but the lyrics felt like home. "You make loving fun." 3 weeks after the wedding, Mom sat me down on the couch. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were too bright. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach dropped. "Is it bad?" She smiled. "No, baby. It's the opposite." She held out the test. 2 pink lines. I don't remember what I said. Just that I screamed. And then cried. And then hugged her so tight Dave thought I broke a rib. The 3 of us sat on the floor for hours, talking names, nursery colors, how weird it would be to start again. But it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like finishing something we didn't know was still being written. As the months passed, I took over prepping the baby's room. Painted the walls a soft green. Pinned tiny socks on a clothesline above the window. Every time I folded a onesie, I thought about who I used to be, lonely, angry, forgotten. And how far I'd come. We'd all come. The day my little brother was born, I was the first to hold him. He looked up at me with sleepy eyes and yawned like he already trusted me. "I'll never leave you," I whispered. Because I knew what that felt like. And I would never let him feel it. We're not perfect. We argue. We cry. Sometimes we still flinch when the past shows up in unexpected ways. But we're here. Together. Healing. Whole. And every now and then, when the baby's asleep and the night is quiet, I look around and realize. This isn't just a second chance. It's our first real one.